Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining today's webinar, 3 Ways Google Performance Max Campaigns Boost Paid Search in 2022, presented by Athena and Search Engine Land. I'm your host, Cynthia Ramsaran. Before we begin, if you have any audio issues, click the audio icon on your screen to enable your audio. If you have any viewing issues, you can use the Q&A section at any time to communicate with us. You can send questions directly to the speaker about his presentation at any time. Without further ado, let's get to the presentation. Joining us today is Gary Galloway, Global Product Marketing Manager at Athena. Welcome back, Gary. It's great to see you again. I'll turn things over to you.
Great. Thank you so much, Cynthia, for that introduction. And thank you so much for hosting me again and also Athena. Really appreciate that. And also appreciate everybody who is on this live call joining us for potentially what's a long weekend, maybe for several of us with this coming weekend. So I really appreciate taking the time out. As Cynthia said, I had the good fortune of presenting in person for the first time in 2 years last week. And I really love the interaction and the audience questions throughout the presentation. So please feel free to ask questions as I'm going along. I am certainly open to those questions and look forward to getting them from you. So yeah, as Cynthia said, my name is Gary Galloway, and I am the Global Product Marketing Director for Athena. I've been working in this world of digital marketing and search for quite a while. I've mainly worked with brands, global brands across countries, locations, and multiple programs. So I really look forward to diving in today. So again, feel free to ask questions as we go along. So some of the visualizations that we're going to show today are from the Athena application when you first log into it or when you log into it on a weekly basis. A few others are from custom Tableau dashboards. So if you're looking to duplicate some of the things that I show you, I certainly encourage you to. Using Data Google Studio via an API would be the best way to go about doing that. So let's get started. So for some of you who have not heard of Athena, we are an award-winning search intelligence platform that helps you dominate your competitive landscape. And we do that by providing strategic insights to your team. And we have a team of experts that will help you do that. Some of the data that we look at today from either our whole market or local view is serviced through our team of experts. So customer success, account managers, really helping enterprise brands win and dominate in their market. Typically, enterprise brands look at us and say, you know, the problem we're solving and the problem that we're having is that we see an increase in costs through search. Excuse me, I'm getting a message to let somebody in, never mind. We're seeing an increase in search, or they may see that the return on investment is going down. Things that are happening in our customers' competitive landscape, and they may just not know why they're losing on their return on investments going down. So our search intelligence is brought in to solve that and help secure budgets moving forward and get better results and, quite frankly, better spending. So some of the brands that we work with, you can see here on your screen. It's really interesting to be so closely aligned with our customers and seeing some industries really thriving and coming out of this global pandemic, and some are quite frankly closing down. So it's a really challenging time for certain industries. Another call out here that I'd like to make is with our agency partners, large and small agencies that really leverage the Athena data to bring value for their accounts and their brands. This is when I would usually ask if there are any questions, so I can take a sip of water. So let me take a sip of water, excuse me. So one of the really attractive things about Athena, I joined Athena last June, and one of the really attractive things about Athena is their hyper focus on global brands, marketers, and agencies. And we really just focus on search. So why search, you may ask? Well, search to me and to Athena is the best barometer for consumer intent. And we focus on Google search. So why Google? Well, this is a cool little website. It simulates the number of searches and the number of activities that are taking place around the world on the internet. So when I presented this several months ago, this number in October of 2021 was 96,000. And just to see the growth of this number of Google searches every second in the world is really startling. So in December of 2021, that number is 97,000. And then if you fast forward to yesterday, when I quickly took a screenshot of this, that number now is 101,000 Google searches every second in the world. So that's pretty amazing to pay attention to that. And with Google and Performance Max, which I'll be talking about shortly, and all the automations, all the machine learning, all this really highly technical stuff, I love to present this slide because digital marketing, and I've worked in digital marketing for 20 years, digital marketing is quite frankly a very simplified version of putting your message in front of some type of target audience. And you do that through different tactics. So you could do that through search, through display, through YouTube at top of the funnel. And you're really just trying to get them to be aware that you exist. And they'll go to your website, check you out, and then you remind them through some sort of retargeting tactic, display, YouTube, whatever. And then you want to get them back to your website. And now they're considering your product and your service. And then finally, you drive them home and get them to convert and to make that decision to either request a demo, I ripped that off our website, or your Amazon, buy now. So that's digital marketing and the simplicity of digital marketing. We're still dealing with human behavior, human psychology. It needs to go through at least 3 stages of that marketing funnel. And I know a lot of people are saying the marketing funnel's dead and this and that, but really mining that framework is important. So just wanted to remind everybody of the simplistic nature of digital marketing. And I've had the good fortune of working with Google and with Facebook and these other technology platforms. And Google was talking about and touting their 7 properties with over 1 billion users each. I probably took this slide from Google 6 or 7 years ago. And those 7 properties that have 1 billion monthly users are Google Play, Google Maps, Android, Google.com, YouTube, Google Chrome, and Gmail. And what Google's really trying to do, and you can look up their earnings report from last quarter, I think it was $74 billion with a B that they posted for 3 months of revenue. They're really trying to occupy all stages of that simple marketing funnel around awareness, consideration, conversion. You can see, I'm not going to list through all these different features or products that Google's selling, but you can see at the very top, they suggest, they recommend to use unbranded search with broad match keywords. As you go further down the funnel, you can see they want to use more brand search with exact match keywords. Well, guess what? Facebook's also a player in this space. I think between the two of them, they have roughly 60% of all digital marketing spend, at least in the US. So Facebook's got a lot of offerings throughout the funnel as well. So what I'm here to talk about today is Performance Max, and got a poll coming up just to kind of gauge the audience around Performance Max. But I want to talk about just the level set Performance Max, what it is, to make sure that we're all on the same page. And then I'm going to dig into 3 ways to really boost your Performance Max performance. That's kind of redundant to say Performance Max performance, but so be it. So for Google Performance Max, it's basically Google's goal-based campaign structure that allows access to all those 7 properties that I just mentioned. And according to Google, it's going to help unlock new audiences, drive better performance across business goals, and really simplify campaign management, reaching customers across, I apologize. I did not advance the slides. I got so excited talking about that, but really just trying to reach converting customers across channels and platforms like YouTube, display, search, discover, Gmail, and Maps. So what the main difference between manual campaigns and Performance Max is that Google's going to automate mainly across those advertising objectives and creative assets. There's a tremendous amount of insights that can be extracted from both of these things, which I'm going to go into shortly. I want to take a quick sip of water. If you don't mind, all this talking makes me thirsty. So combining those objectives and creative assets, and you start doing some automations around Google's smart creatives across display, dynamic search, and responsive search ads, it might end up saving you a whole lot of time and a lot of headache. You're also going to be giving up some deal of control and potentially a great deal of insights that can really help you optimize your campaigns that are specific to you. So that is what we're going to jump into shortly. So really, you're choosing between these specific business objectives with Performance Max. And for those of you who have not run a Facebook campaign, if you were to go into Facebook Ad Manager, Facebook's doing the same thing. They're optimizing across various placements like Facebook Newsfeed, Instagram Stories, Facebook Messenger, WhatsApp. You can optimize your campaigns, or you can have Facebook optimize your campaigns based on your business objective. But this is not a Facebook webinar. This is a Google Performance Max. So let me stay on script. So with Google Performance Max and these creative assets, Google is going to automatically assemble ads based on things like ad copy, images, and videos in the case of YouTube. So this is just a very high level Performance Max overview. So when you are running Performance Max campaigns, unfortunately, advertisers are going to give up some control over factors and also give up ways to surface opportunities to improve performance. So I am going to ask Cynthia to queue up the first poll just so I can get a sense of your experience with Performance Max. Maybe you're all experts on it. And I would just kind of like to get an idea of the audience of your experience. So let me see how the results are coming in. So great. Looks like some good results are coming in. 43% roughly have not implemented it yet. No idea or not relevant for 5%. As long as I hit CPA and return on investment metrics, I am all good. Unsure if I'd get the campaign granularity I need. 26% said that. So it looks like we're getting close to a tie, around 25, 26% for choice question A. Haven't implemented yet. Question C is at 43%. So that's great to hear. And that's great. That's good feedback. I appreciate that. As a speaker, I sometimes, when I'm doing webinars, I feel like I'm speaking into a silo because I don't get that normal audience engagement. So that was great feedback. I really appreciate you taking the time to do that. So we're going to jump in to three ways to boost your Google Performance Max campaigns. And let's just go ahead and start with point one is to kind of understand the evolution of smart bidding and how that factors in to Performance Max campaigns. So we were lucky enough to catch the Google rep and get their product roadmap. And I ripped this off, I took this from their presentation. And really the first step in the evolution is click-based bidding. Evolution's really taking our focus from very singular targets and evolving it to more sophisticated bidding, where you're assigning value around performance, where you segment by, say, a new customer, a returning customer, maybe an engagement from a search or display ad. You're really trying to attribute some kind of revenue action to your search campaign. And this is really fantastic at getting every part of your account associated with driving real business objectives. And as you go through the evolution of smart bidding, and some of us are adopting this and some of us are learning from our peers, finally you get to the value bidding, and it's around return on ad spend, CPA value bidding. And there you let the machine do a lot of the heavy lifting with smart bidding. And you can assign different bid amounts depending on how important they are to you. For example, maybe a dollar bid at the top of the funnel, $2 bid in the middle of the funnel, and a $3 bid at the bottom of the funnel. This is a very simplistic example, but you basically can assign and bid on each stage of that customer journey. So that's important to kind of just understand the evolution of that smart bidding. So if we're going to go all in on these features, kind of need to understand and discuss the trade-offs. So as I've labeled these, this chart as risk and returns. On the left-hand side, the blue column, when we go full on with automated management, you want the engine to create more broad keywords for you and find those naturally. And that's great. And I think that's a really good use case for that. When you have a growing pool of demand, you want to get your hand in there and capture those and make sure that you're getting into the right place. And then you may opt into the smart biddings, the RSAs, the DSAs. And if you set that properly and let it run, the machine's going to do the rest. And this is built to manage at scale. But for the person that really wants to know what's going on, I'd push on understand what's working. Using that old 80-20 rule, 20% of your keywords are maybe generating 80% of your results. It may not be quite that extreme, but what is the part in your campaign that is really doing well? And what's the 80% that may be pulling it down? I'd really push on what are the search terms that resonate with the audience, pushing into the empathy of what's working. And as we've learned over the past 2 years, things changed drastically. We had a lot of BOBUS, buy online, pick up in store, that emerged during the global pandemic. And things can change daily if you don't pay attention to it. So really looking at those options and changing your bid variants by audience and demographic. So when you go in with a broad brush approach on managing your campaigns to a performance metric, are you really forgetting about some of those segments that can be driven with search terms and possibly overlay a slightly different target? And finally, if you roll all your campaigns up to, say, a national level, are you segmenting by region? And I have a visual coming up that talks about this, so I'll save that for when I get to it. But really the point of this slide is just to show the risk and the returns for automation and what you're giving up and what you're gaining. So that's really the point of this slide. So from an ad copy perspective, it's kind of reminds me, and I stole this from our VP of marketing, it's kind of like Oliver Twist. Please, sir, can I have some more? It feels like with ad copy, if it's with DSA or automated creation, it's like the last bit on the list, and you can check that box. So hopefully you'll have your conversions coming in, and when you really want to get more from the system, there's a natural demand to understand what's going on and what's happening with ad copy. So the example that I have on the right-hand side is from one of our agency partners around Uber Eats and fast food market, and really understanding the ad copy that's going on in that competitive landscape. And when they put in coupons at, say, a particular time of day, dinner time around 6 p.m., you can see how much more the engagement spikes around those times. And those are the darker rectangles up there in that second image. So it's really great to automate your DSA, but it's far more important to keep your lens pretty broad here on what's going on in your competitive landscape. So when there is this broad brush approach being applied to campaigns, it's asking if you're comfortable with your top ads running for a certain amount of time. The way that Athena indexes Google search results data, we can actually see how long top ads have been running on particular terms. So you'd be amazed at how long some of them have actually been running. We have some that have been running for over 85 days. So something to consider is how well your ads resonate at the state level. How well does your ad resonate, say, in Salt Lake City compared to Savannah, Georgia? Or if you're a retailer, what does curbside pickup look like compared to in-store pickup? I mentioned BOBUS earlier, buy online, pickup in store. That was tremendously popular at the height of the pandemic. So paying attention to that stuff really matters. And the customer sentiment changes daily. And all those nuances are pretty critical to pay attention to. So if we struggle with this with our own search team, sometimes that dynamic search ads can result in fairly wonky formatting. So when you set a template, the headline here is one of the struggles that we have with our own search team, and it has absolutely nothing to do with our amazing search team and the work that they do. But you can see the headline here for Athena, trademark -Athena, kind of comes out wonky. And this headline is just an example of the machine and what's coming out of it. So it's good to pay attention to that sort of thing. So really the takeaways here from this first part is ways to boost your campaigns using Performance Max. Figure out what your trade-off is first. Is your ad copy kind of broad brush? Do your absolute best to not be lazy. I know it's not always easy because we're all crunched with time. We're all crunched with resources. So just pay attention to the ad copy. And if you have a compelling brand offer, then that should always be reviewed and looked at. So moving on to the second way to potentially boost your Performance Max campaigns is to really lean into these creative insights that you can get from your campaigns and also from your competitors. We often overlook and stay focused on our own brands. What we encourage here, and there are tools that can do this partially with, say, Auction Insights and other keyword tools out there that can give you a slightly broader view on your market landscape. So I'm going to use this example here. If you leverage Google's Performance Max and you opt into all the smart bidding automation and across the entire tool of features, it's also going to have an impact on your smart shopping, on your local campaigns. So while it's best practice to benchmark your campaigns over time, just be aware that when you do go to market and you do embrace this change with Performance Max, pay attention to the changes of any kind for, say, click-through rate by region, or whatever your nearest competitor is doing as well, because those benchmarks will certainly change when you implement Performance Max. So let's say you opted into the suite of Google Ads and all the options available. So you can see here on the tile on the left-hand side, you may have one campaign that spans across all of Google's channels. So from a speed perspective, you're certainly going to be out of that gate pretty quickly. And you may, so you'll be out of that gate pretty quickly after you've checked all the boxes and you're starting to perform well. So if you approach it from slightly slower perspective, like a lot of our customers do, who are managing the complexities of search campaigns across the world, across state level, down to city level, and that sort of thing, then sometimes you need to take a slightly slower approach and be more strategic about your go-to-market with each of your campaigns. So you'll probably want to segment and look for clearer data. And really, I do encourage you all to check out a recent blog that we've published on the Athena.com website. It's going to give you a whole lot more details about Performance Max in which you can dive a lot deeper into. So what I want to show you next is really embracing that change in Google. And if you optimize into all the automation with all of your bidding, but let's say that you're more strategic in this instance, then you may miss nuances in your competitive landscape. This is a visualization that we took on a key market in retail to understand the message and ad copy and if it's actually working. So our models at Athena look at click-through rate in this example and also click share and share of spend. So you'll notice the key shift here is movement toward free shipping and free returns for this segment. So if you just opted into your campaigns, you'll likely miss this if the market is moving and you're not. So the bit that I want to pull in as well, if you're focused on setting and kind of forgetting your keywords in your search campaigns, you'll likely miss something. Like I said, curbside pickup in this example and in this instance was a key change through the pandemic and something that all the competition would have in your auction segment ad group. Another example that we've recently seen is a shift in ad copy for some of our customers in the automotive industry. Many of them are now including inventory now because inventory has been such an issue for the past 7 or 8 months for many of the automotive makers. They can't get chips, they can't get specific parts. So as inventory starts to roll in, many of our automotive customers and brands are including inventory now in their ad copy. So just something to pay attention to. This next slide here that I want to show you is really a great deal of insight that's led by our customer success team for a leading US retailer. And they have the home improvement category shown here. To dive into the key trends first, we're segmenting the trend here. This is the share of clicks trend for mobile paid text ads in both of these cases, in both of these charts. So the yellow competitor here has increased their performance, and they've taken market share very quickly in, say, the span of 4 to 5 days. Now, the response time here is setting up daily alerts on market share shift. So what's important to understand here is how they did that. That 19% increase that they have is where they are able to segment and look into home improvement and segment by price and offer. While it's important to benchmark your performance weekly or monthly, understanding the why is really the more important element here. So with this data, within a week's time, they were able to make up that percentage and spin that back around. So that bottom chart that you see there, they're able to regain the market share by being responsive and understanding the ad copy changes. So when you dig into these trends by segment, you'll really understand price point analysis, missing search terms, product title analysis on, say, Google Shopping. And no one really wants to be on the hook for answering the question of why we have lost, say, 9% market share to our closest competitor and not have an answer. So this is why paying attention to ad copy is really critical. Sorry for my water breaks. So next up, I really want to explain a bit about why messaging matters as you start thinking about and rolling out Performance Max campaigns. Messaging is perhaps one of my favorite areas to just kind of point out some things about the visualizations that you see up here. The top left image, this is just ad copy from Google search. So what Athena does is index and analyzes Google search results pages and everything that comes back from Google. We index it, we analyze it with our AI models and our whole market view and our local market view. The beauty of this is that it's observed data. It's the ad that's triggered on specific search terms, and it's what your audience or target customers will see when they search. So if you're firing DSAs or RSAs, it might be that you're unsure what format it is that's converting. So this kind of is the holy grail of that, and it gives you a full clarity of what's converting, what's being delivered on the Google search results page, so that you can make sense of perhaps all the automation that's happening with all the new features from Google. So really, messaging does matter, and messaging matters from another perspective as well. So if your competition comes in and steals market share or click share with a particular message, then you'd probably like to know about that. So the bottom visualization is showing Smart Monitor with daily alerts to tell you how your competition is doing it and where they're doing it. So it's highly segmented, but it's really helping our brands, and will help you react faster to the competition. So this is a classic black box example that I want to talk about. So let's say that you're a brand manager or you're managing a brand within an agency. It's critical to understand threats and the opportunities that are out there. It's absolutely fine to drive a campaign toward a target CPA, but do you just let it run in Google Ads? Like I mentioned, that ad that we've seen with it running for 85 days plus. The granularity that you're going to get from Google is kind of around best, good, low, small, medium, large performance. And that's about as deep as the granularity that you're going to get. So let me ask you, if you had a key season coming up, like summer is about to come up, travel, flights, do you have adequate reporting in place to really demonstrate what messaging is resonating in the whole of your market? Not just in the terms that you're appearing on, but what are you missing out on? If your competition just, say, launched a trail running shoe or opened up a new hotel in Denver, what is the message that they're using that's driving the end user to their website to make them aware of that new product launch or of that new hotel? And really, how do you want to segment your market? And this data, there's data out there to maximize that impact. So opting in to a lot of automated features is great, and it lets the engine work. But as advertisers, we should be asking ourselves these questions to really figure out the why. This next slide I'm going to show you has a lot of talking points, and it's quite busy, but I want to try to break it down and simplify it as much as I can. But at Athena, what we're really doing is we do a lot of amazing things, but we're looking at thousands and thousands of ad copy that sits in a particular segment. So in this case, we ran this for a retailing brand, and they wanted to understand the nuances on call to action. So in our AI, we can segment calls to action. We can segment sentiment, offers, seasonality, incentives, and then they can be automatically bucketed into what's working out in the market now. So you'll see where the number of impressions naturally gravitates toward language like shop and now. Key advertisers made considerable ground on clicks and impressions when they started using phrases like discover, now, and find. So while these are fairly simple words, understanding or getting the AI to spot these patterns to see where they are doing it is incredibly powerful. Some of these advertisers in retail introduced new features like new offers, new discount codes, new outlets, and those sort of things. So the segmentation here is incredibly powerful. The other thing that comes to play here are the unique ads that come in. As I mentioned earlier, having an ad sit on the search results page for 85 days is definitely frightening, and it's not something that you would like to do. So when you look at the whole relevant market as to how many new ads come in on a daily basis, this really brings you up to speed with keeping up with those changes. So I'm pretty sure that a few of you, probably many of you on this call and on this webinar are pretty well versed with auction insights. This comes back from that example I showed you earlier. One of our agency partners at Media Hub and with the brand Chipotle, we're leveraging auction insights to try and guide what to do with the Chipotle brand. So what they missed out on is the market share by each of those partners in the market. As I mentioned, partners such as Uber Eats, Just Eats, other advertisers, they're part of that partner network trying to acquire customers, and they're actually eating into Chipotle's market share. So the daily alerts that they set up really police those partners incredibly well, showing that the ad copy they were using at any given time was taking away from the Chipotle brand's market share. So what was happening is that you see a whole influx of that new ad copy coming in around dinner time, as I mentioned. So it really pays attention. So it really pays to be targeted with that messaging and that offer and that specific time of day. So while auction insights is great for a bit of insight on your direct competition and what you're appearing on, it's not going to tell you what you're not appearing on. And that's a key difference there. So the takeaways here for this second way to boost your Performance Max campaigns is not to forget that the ad copy clearly influences click share. The amount of clicks available in one market that you can get. So if you're running an offer or a discount on your competitor, let's say they're running a sale, that can take away from your click share. So with Performance Max, are you happy to make those decisions with less search term data? Still feel like there's a place at the table to understand what's driving volume and what's not. And also to remember to be responsive with ad copy, making sure that you change and adapt your message. So observed data is really critical and really key here. So with the auction insights example, it's really not in Google's interest to tell you what the direct competitor is running in their ad copy, not at a really great scale anyhow. So using third-party independent data that actually indexes the search results page is pretty key. And the data is publicly available, and it doesn't really run into any sort of issues in terms of, say, sign on and being signed on to the Google platform. It's readily available to be consumed. And that's one of the things that Athena does is index those search results pages. So let me skip to the last section here for the third way to boost your Performance Max campaigns. It's really thinking about and assessing local markets at scale. So there's some really great visualizations in this last section, and I'm a visual learner and a visual person, so this is one of my favorite sections. But with the user behavior shifting pre or post pandemic, a lot of people are now working from home, or they're working at very local co-working spaces. So a lot of behavior shifting from regional cities. And you see a lot of enhancements that Google's putting into around SMB focus and attention, better Google Maps, enhancing it with a lot of those cool Google Waze features, and also enhanced Google My Business listings. So it's naturally fitting because those auctions are happening away from city hubs and happening far more locally. And this is what I want to talk about here in my last section. So this visualization here is really an aha moment for brands. And it's kind of, it makes complete sense once you hear it. But let's say you're running a national brand campaign, a national brand message. And in this example, we're using the furniture market. So it could be quite presumptuous by the brand to look at the top right chart. This is the national share of clicks trend chart. And it could be presumptuous by the brand to just look at this and assess their closest competition. So you'll see here in this chart, this is segmented by paid mobile. Both of these charts are showing paid mobile text ads. So the competition looks like one thing in the national level, but when you skip down here to the left-hand chart, this is taking a glance at Atlanta. This brand opened up a new retail store in Atlanta, and they needed to better understand that market in far more granularity. So all of a sudden, these two new players emerged when they started looking at the Atlanta market. And combined, those two players had a 30% plus market share. So these two competitors were not on the radar at the state level or at the national base level. So coming into this, it really opened up the team's eyes, and they needed to really figure out how they're doing it, how these two competitors are doing it, how they have achieved 30% market share, how they're winning against their brand. So while it's important to understand that, it's important to also drill into the local market to get a good sense of your competitive landscape. So here I'm going to pause and take a sip of water and also ask someone to launch the second poll. If they could be so kind, that would be helpful. Thank you. So this is great. I'm seeing some people responding. I regularly assess local markets as part of my paid search strategy. We are seeing about neck and neck here, a tie between you bet, kind of. I have not thought much about local marketing targeting. And that very well could be fun because you might not be running a local campaign. So this is great. I really appreciate this engagement. I imagine all of you smiling ear to ear as you're taking this poll. That's what I'm seeing in my audience. Great. Let's see. Any late stragglers coming in? 41% saying kind of. 32% saying you betcha. That's how I imagine you saying it. And then 27% saying I have not thought much about it. Cool. Thank you so much for that. That gives me a good indication of your local market attention. So thank you for that. I am getting close to the end. I usually like to have slide numbers, 17 of 31 in the bottom right-hand corner. I apologize for not having that. So this last, second to last, I promise. This next chart that I'm going to show you here, it's really pretty cool. So what we did here is we use Tableau here that was fed by our API. So if this is something that you want to replicate with your own data or Google Trends into your own dashboards, it may give you some food for thought of how we've done it and how we're doing it for some of our brands. So the green areas that you're seeing here on this map of the US, the green areas, those green cities, they're doing well from a healthy share of clicks perspective. Where you see this overlaid is when ad copy is responsible for higher conversions, when radio, TV, outdoor, traditional advertisement elements are also running. And what it's really doing is ranking all of these by click efficiencies in each of the relevant markets. So something that probably jumps out at you is that poor little red market down there in Florida. So that's Tampa, Florida. And the share of clicks are declining at an alarming rate. And this is something that they needed to address. So this is looking at the total view of market clicks. We have the ability to segment this by search terms as well. So we'll stick to the furniture example. Let's say that if it's a garden furniture store, we can segment that out and really understand at that level that there are other players coming in, perhaps running discounts, offers, free delivery on garden furniture. So dashboards like this is consumed on, I would say, a bi-weekly basis to really guide the entire teams on the local market strategy, not just the search teams, but brand teams, traditional advertising teams, even at the SEO team, just to see where rankings can possibly be improved on click share on those specific terms that they want to focus on. So last but not least, this next view is one of my favorites. I helped build this out when we launched it, is really just showing a data calculation table. And we've been using this for a lot of advertisers. And this is really around investment intelligence, and it's where to place your bets. So you saw the two visualizations earlier in those previous slides, the trending and the mapping out one by region. So here we're looking at share of clicks and share of spend. So in Google Ads, as almost all of us know and have probably done, I've certainly done it, I've easily overspent in particular categories. So here we can overlay this by region. We can overlay this by state. We can overlay this by city. I have state shown here in this example. And we've created this metric called spend efficiency, which is basically a ratio of share of clicks versus share of spend. And at that point, when you start looking at your spend efficiency, you can start to optimize and hone in on specific regions. I'm using the term region pretty broadly here, but region can be defined by DMA, designated market area, city, state, and that sort of thing. So really, you just want to see where you're getting the biggest bang for your buck. So the worst case scenario is, let's look at one that has a higher share of spend than share of clicks. So we'll take a quick look at Tennessee. And here you can see Tennessee is kind of trying to spend their way out of the problem. So what you can do here is go over to the top right, and you can investigate the next steps to get that share of spend less than your share of clicks. So what you do is you can really unpack all the reasons for the poor performance in Tennessee. You can investigate essentially 4 different things. You can look at market trends and answer questions like, do certain competitors have a large share of clicks in Tennessee? You can investigate movements for that location. For instance, is there a new competitor who's entered Tennessee market? And maybe they're bidding aggressively on the same search term groups. You can also investigate search terms for that location and figure out if you're missing a search term that competitors are using in Tennessee. And finally, you're able to investigate ad copy and figure out what offers, calls to actions, and incentives are being used in competitor ads that's resonating with the Tennessee consumers. So ideally, what you want to try to do is get it to look more like New Jersey, is to have a higher share of clicks than a share of spend, and really to get each region in which you're running a local campaign to that optimal level. So to conclude here, I want to just kind of wrap this up and really show you that those visualizations really hopefully broaden the view as far as performance measure goes, and how ad copy can especially influence that. So all this data is coming from, like I said, observed data from the search engine results page. I have a weird thing about acronyms, so I like to call it out. And we put that into an aggregated view. So really, you can then segment by your particular audience, returning customers, new customers, device, ad group, really whatever you want to. And this is really going to help you set the path on how you can dominate your competitive landscape. So I am talked out. Hopefully there's some good questions in the queue that I can answer. If I can't answer them, then I know somebody who can.
Hi, Gary. We've got a ton of questions, so go ahead and drink that water, and I'm going to take the first one for you. So it's from Mike, and Mike asks, how do you know the Performance Max campaigns aren't just traffic conversions from branded terms?
I'm sorry, I'm just writing that down. Well, and that's part of the learning stage that we'll all need to go through, is to learn what is converting and to pay attention to it. I think a big learning stage and learning phase is happening right now with Performance Max. I certainly don't have specific examples or answers, but definitely measuring and looking at what's working and not setting it and forgetting it, and to test and to see how it is working from a performance standpoint. And if none of my answers adequately answer your questions, then please let's find a way to follow up with me so that I can connect you to somebody who can better and adequately answer those questions.
Sounds great. I know that at the end of the, go ahead, I'm sorry.
I always feel sufficiently, the audience here is so intelligent and so smart. I always feel intimidated by some of the questions that I get, but I have 140 people I can reach out to at Athena who could definitely answer any question that I can't. So thank you. Thank you for that question.
Excellent. And our next question is from Michael. We are using Performance Max with good results for our retail products we sell on Shopify. Can it also work well for a SaaS company selling software services?
Yeah, and again, I think that it certainly can, and I think that it can have a lot of time savings in scaling up the campaigns by taking a lot of the automations and the automated settings. I think it's still, it's one of these things, depending on your budget and how much you're spending, pretty important and pretty critical to pay attention to what's converting, what keywords are converting, pay attention to the objectives in the Performance Max campaign, and just unpry that black box as much as possible to optimize your campaigns.
Okay. Duncan asks, does Performance Max outrank manual campaign types to incentivize adoption?
So that's a great question. And in the product, the Google product roadmap deck, which I did not include, I think Google had a stat in there that said Performance Max campaigns outperform manual-based campaigns by 15%. I spoke at the PPC Hero conference in February in Austin, Texas, and several of the people in the audience had basically the counter story that the Performance Max campaigns they were running performed 15% worse than manual campaigns. So I'm certainly not going to put a flag in the ground and say one way or the other. That is my observed data from both Google and then also a very small sample from PPC Hero. So you're going to really have to test that for yourself so you can get confidence in Performance Max and what it's doing and when to possibly use it and when possibly not to use it. So that was a good non-answer.
Okay, our next question is from Chandani. Can you explain, or can you help explain, why is this campaign type called a goal-based campaign? Usually we select the goal first for any campaign type.
So the language and the nuances of these platforms can get a little bit confusing. So the goal-based campaigns could be around a specific goal as a KPI. So it could be like ROAS or CPA. The objectives that you're selecting at the beginning of the Performance Max campaigns, very similar to the objectives you select in Facebook, is to drive leads or to get video views or to get app installs. So those are the differences as I understand them. So the objectives are business objectives and what you're trying to do with the campaign. And then the goals are the specific KPIs you're going to pay attention to. And if you're manually tuning the campaign, you're going to tune it off of that key performance indicator. So that's as I understand the two differences and the nuances. So I don't know if that answers the question or not. These are such great questions.
Agreed. Our next question is from Megan. What has been your experience with running Performance Max without video assets?
That's a great question. So with the video assets, obviously the video assets are needed to span across the YouTube platform or the YouTube channel. So really it just doesn't run, and it's limited in where it can run. And I have done and have done a lot of development work around a YouTube video offering. And I do have a very strong opinion about where YouTube does excel and where YouTube does work extremely well. It works very well, obviously, at top of the funnel around awareness. They have a retargeting product through YouTube, and it works really well for the consideration phase. So again, I think this is why the state of the world or the state of the industry is moving into this objective-based campaign. A lot of these questions that I often get, it really just depends on what you're trying to do. And if you're trying to say, premiere a new movie, do a world premiere of a new movie, you obviously want to get a lot of video views of your trailer. So the objective-based campaigns really just helps answer that question. It just depends on what you're trying to do. Great questions.
All right.
Any other questions?
Another question yeah, we have a lot of questions to get through. So
we might need to do
Gary,
a part 2.
I think so. Our next question is from Michael. He says, my number one question that I have about Performance Max. We use the maximize conversion value as our bidding strategy. Should we also use the option to set a target return on ad spent, or just let Google use our budget and maximize conversion value?
Yeah, so the return on ad spend option is when you're starting to get into and evaluating your click rate optimization stream. And maximizing conversions is one thing where people can fill out a form, and click stream optimization certainly factors into that. If you're an e-commerce company, e-commerce brand or shop, you have to evaluate your click rate optimization as far as completing the purchase. So return on ad spend gets a little bit fuzzier if you haven't completely optimized your click rate optimization. So it sounds like if I were in your shoes, you're doing it the exact same way I would, and without any visibility into actually getting some sort of return from a business standpoint and any visibility into that. That's how I would start off. And I would have to know a little bit more information about the return on ad spend and how you've been optimized in that area, if that makes sense.
Okay. We have time for some more questions. So our next one is from Tanner. How does Performance Max work with discovery or display campaigns? Would you recommend running Performance Max without running these other types?
Well, yeah, and that's the nuances of this, right? So you're really starting to, let's say that you had the option to go in and exclude certain channels on Google, like you wanted to exclude YouTube, you wanted to exclude display. Then you're starting to get into some of the automated search features, and there's starting to be a lot of overlap between those automated search features. I think I accidentally skipped one of those slides that shows around the smart creatives. But again, this is a kind of a joint phase and a joint stage for a lot of us to just kind of do some collective learning and to learn from each other. So again, I would just test it. And I wish I had a straight answer for you to yes, do that, or yes, do that. But the same situation happens with Facebook. You can go in and have Facebook optimize your campaign based on the different placements. Placements is what Facebook uses. Obviously, I mentioned this. Facebook newsfeed, Instagram stories. Well, a bulk of your spend is going to basically be in parallel with the bulk of the users. So Facebook newsfeed has the most monthly active users. Instagram stories, doesn't have as many users. So I've run campaigns for the Subaru brand for their Impreza, which skews very young toward 18 to 34-year-olds. And we thought that a bulk of the spend would go from Instagram, but a bulk of it went to Facebook newsfeed just because that's where the traffic was. So I'm getting off onto a tangent with Facebook placements, but hopefully that answers part of your question.
Thanks, Gary. I think we have time for one more question, and it's from Megan. Are there insights to analyze Performance Max campaigns delivery broken down by network or placement, such as search, display, maps, Discover, YouTube, Gmail, etc.?
Cynthia, I'm so sorry. You cut out there at the beginning, and I'm trying to find that question. Do you mind?
Oh, sure.
I see it. Now, can you go ahead and ask that question again?
Yeah, sure. Are there insights to analyze Performance Max campaigns delivery broken down by network placement?
So when the question is asking about network placements, I think of network placement. So search is the channel, Google is the network. So Google display. And yeah, that reporting is available to show you deliverability, viewability, and performance. And again, if you think about these from a digital marketing standpoint, there's different tactics that work well in different spaces. So if you start looking and evaluating the click-through rate of, say, a display ad, that performance is going to be less than 0.1%. So just make sure you're comparing apples to apples and that you're really looking at the right tactic or the right network in the right part of the marketing funnel, if that makes sense. You got to really put on your strategy hat and just kind of think through this as an end user. We're all hit with ads. So just kind of think about it from that perspective.
All right. I think we can squeeze in one more question. What do you think, Gary?
Oh, these questions are so good. They make me so nervous, but sure, go ahead.
All right. Let's see. I have one more question here from Renee. How do you limit cannibalizations of your current campaigns with Performance Max?
So how do you? Yeah, so in that case, you have to be really selective with your target, who you're targeting, be selective with your creative, maybe be selective and strategic with how you're setting up your campaigns. If you have overlapping campaigns and overlapping keywords, then you're going to kind of get into a scenario where you will start cannibalizing your manual campaigns. So just be very mindful of how you set them up. And again, this is a learning opportunity and a time for learning. So be very mindful with how you set up your campaigns. And if you did want to see how much cannibalization happens, then have some overlapping keywords and that sort of thing. But this is an opportunity to learn by doing. So that's a great question as well.
Excellent. Gary, thank you so much for your presentation and for taking on all of these questions. And thank you to our audience for asking all of these questions. If we didn't get to them, we will be sure to pass it along to the team at Athena. On behalf of Search Engine Land, I'd like to thank our audience for attending the webinar, and we hope to see you again soon.
Thank you.